Good morning, Algebra 1. We are working on, let me get that going. All right, so this is our first day of notes for Indicator 12. So we've started a new section, and we are still working with tables and maps and graphs and different things that we dealt with in Indicator 11. But today we're actually going to learn two new vocabulary words. We're going to talk about domain and range. And so with domain and range, we are going to be listing x values and y values in a relation. So domain is the set of x values of a relation, and the range would be the set of y values in a relation. So sometimes they're functions, sometimes they're not. So I'm going to give you guys some examples to take a look at. And the first one we are going to look at here is, all right, let me get an x and a y axis going. All right, so this is our x and this is our y. And we are looking at this graph that looks like this. All right, so we have a graph, and you are going to be asked a few questions about your graphs, and I'm going to try to raise this up so that way you can see it a little better. All right, so the first thing I'm going to ask you about this graph, is it a function? All right, is this graph a function? If we can see here, we have no points directly on top of each other. It would pass that vertical line test, so we would say yes, it is a function. All right, and then to list the domain, we have lots of x values here, but we are looking at the x-axis. And so whenever you are looking at your x-axis, you want to see how far it starts from the left. So the farthest point on the left is here, and I'm actually going to draw a little dotted line. Well, we'll draw a straight dotted line to show the starting and the ending point for the domain. So the domain, the smallest value is at -1, -2, -3, and then x is in between -3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, and +4. So we write that as an inequality. So we always write the smallest value on the left, here is -3, the biggest value on the right, which is 4, and then x goes in the middle because domain's talking about the x values. And then you also will be asked to find the range of this function. We're going to do the same thing, low point and high point of the graph. So the range, we're talking about the y-axis, and so I want to know which two numbers are the high points and the low points. So we're going to start with that smallest number first. Sorry, it's a little bit harder to see. My camera's not doing the greatest. There we go. Okay, so the lowest number we see here going across the bottom on the y-axis is -2, and it goes all the way up to here. That's the highest point on the graph, and that is +1, +2, +3, +4, +5. So our domain goes from -3 to +4 on the x-axis, and it goes from -2 to +5 on the y-axis. So if you can see, once I made that little dotted line, it's almost like you make a frame around the edges, and then the sides go with the domain, and then the top and the bottom go with the range. So we're going to do a couple more examples like this. Just bear with me a second. I got to find an eraser. Oh, that blue was not a good blue. So I hope you guys all had a great weekend. And I'll say I'm recording this on a Friday, so that way it's all ready to go on Monday, because I'm trying to stay ahead of the game because I know I'm going to be exhausted from taking my kids trick-or-treating. All right, so let me try to do a smaller graph this time. All right, so I'm talking about a perfect circle here. It's not the best, but it's a pretty decent circle. So our y-axis is here and our x-axis is here. And so we're going to talk about first, is it a function? Now, is this circle a function? Do we have 2 points on top of each other? Absolutely. Failed the vertical line test, so this is no, it's not a function. Now, if we are doing domain, we're talking about our x's. So we're looking at the x-axis, we're going left and right. The farthest point over here is this point here, -1, -2, -3, all the way up to 1, 2, 3. That's the farthest, to +3. And then our range, and one thing about a circle, they do have equal radius, and our center is at 0, so 1, 2, 3 is our high point, 1, 2, 3, -3 is our low point. So this one actually happens to be the same domain and range because the starting and stopping values were all at -3 and +3. Same thing here, -3 on the bottom, +3 on the top, highest point and lowest point, and we have our domain and range. Now, whenever you have a graph, it's always written as an inequality. Oh, I made a mistake. My range is not my x, my range is my y. I'm going to say if I had a classroom full of kids, they'd be yelling at me right now, I'm sure. So whenever you have a graph, you're always going to write your domain and range as an inequality. So if you are looking at graphs, you are always going to write domain and range as an inequality. And that just means where we're writing like the greater than, x is greater than this, less than this, y is greater than this, less than this. So it is an inequality. We're talking about a set of numbers. So we have x values on our domain all the way from -3 to +3, and on the y's we have coordinates all the way from -3 to +3. Nothing goes beyond 3. And that is why our domain and range is set that way. Now, if you are given specific values like a set of ordered pairs or a table or a map or anything like that, it is slightly different. So I will show you how to write those. They're actually a lot simpler because you just write what you see. So I'm going to give you an example of a table first. All right, so this table. All right, so if I give you a table, sometimes they're written horizontally, sometimes they're worked vertically, so we'll just stick with this. All right, so this is a table. Now our domain is our set of x values. So this is our x row, so this is going to be our domain. Now when we want to write our domain as a set, sets always have those really pretty curly brackets to start and stop them. Now one thing I would like you to do for your domain and range is list them in order from least to greatest. So we have a -2, then our next smallest number is 0. Now we have 2 3s. You only list repeats one time. And then for your range, we're going to include all of the values in this column, but we are going to make it very formal and order them. So the range, the smallest number is -1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, and we are done. So you're simply just listing your x values from least to greatest and your y values from least to greatest. So that's just telling you your domain goes from -2 to +5, and your range goes from -1 to +5. But we just write them as a list. So that is an example of a table. I can give you another example of a table. Sometimes your tables are written this way, just depending on the situation. Okay, so we have this. All right, so this here is going to talk about our domain, and this one's going to talk about our range. So let's make this look really nice. All right, so for our domain, we're going to write it as a set. The smallest number I see is -3, then 0, 3, 6, and 5. So all of my x's are unique. So I want to ask you, just review from last week, is this a function? Absolutely, because now sometimes you might be asked, is this a function? You would say yes, because all the x's are unique. So we went 0, 3, 5, 5, 6. Wrong order. All right, and then our range, we're going to go from least to greatest. Our smallest value is -2. My next value is 4, but I only have to list it one time because we don't list repeats in domain and range. We're simply just saying what values are possible. We don't have to list it twice. And so our domain is our x's from least to greatest, and our range is our y values from least to greatest. Now, I have one more example I want to do like this. And this is just if you have a set of ordered pairs. So sometimes your set of ordered pairs, you'll just be given a bracket with a bunch of points. All right, so on this one, our domain, our x values, our x values come from the first number in our ordered pair. So these are all different. So this would be a function if you were asked. All right, the smallest value I see in those x's, I see a 0, and then I see a 3, and then a 4, and then a 5. All right, and then my range would be my remaining numbers that I did not list my y-coordinates. My smallest value is a -2, then -1, then a +4, and then a 7. So we get our x values from least to greatest, and then we wrote our y values from least to greatest, and that is domain and range. And then tomorrow we will deal with part 2, and we'll do a little bit more with it. If you guys have questions on your homework, don't hesitate to let me know. Have a great day.